After 13 years of marriage, my husband said he'd fallen out of love and wanted a divorce. It didn't come as a surprise, so I didn't argue. But last month, he suddenly turned sweet again. Yesterday, my lawyer called me about the divorce papers. She casually mentioned the inheritance my grandfather had left me. That was the moment everything started making sense. But to really understand, you have to go back a few weeks before the lawyer's call, before I realized how deep his manipulation went. If you're watching this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to know just how far my story has traveled. The first morning it happened, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. Not the box kind either, the real deal. Butter sizzling on the pan, chocolate chips melting, and that faint hum of Marvin Gaye floating from the kitchen. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Idris hadn't cooked breakfast in years. He used to toss me a granola bar on his way out the door, mumbling something about being late. But that morning, there he was, standing over the stove like a man who remembered how to love. He turned, smiling, spatula in hand. "Morning, baby," he said, and kissed my cheek like he used to, like it still meant something. "What's all this?" I asked, blinking. He shrugged, flipping another pancake. "Just thinking we could use a fresh start." A fresh start. Those words hit like an echo. Just a month earlier, this same man told me he didn't love me anymore, that he was tired of pretending. He'd sat across from me at the dining table, eyes cold, and said, "Lena, we've become strangers." I want out, and honestly, I hadn't begged. I hadn't screamed. I just nodded, heartbroken but oddly relieved. Because the truth was, we had become strangers. The silence between us had grown heavier than the love we once had. So when he suddenly turned into a Hallmark husband overnight, I didn't know what to do with it. I smiled, ate the pancakes, but something deep in my gut whispered that it wasn't love, it was strategy. He kept it up for days. Flowers, compliments, text messages that sounded like they were lifted from some couple's therapy manual. "Thinking of you. Hope your day is going well. Dinner tonight." Part of me wanted to believe it. The other part, the bruised, quiet part that had learned not to trust pretty words, just watched. And watching is how I started to see the cracks. He'd slip sometimes. Like the night he called me by my full name, Lena Thompson, instead of Lay, while talking to someone on the phone. I was in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through recipes, when I caught the tone. It wasn't affectionate, it was businesslike. His voice dropped low, and I heard him say something about settling things soon. When I walked in, he hung up fast and smiled. Just work stuff. But Idris worked in marketing. There was no settling to do. I told myself not to spiral, not to assume, but it felt off. So when my lawyer, Nisha, called me the next day about the divorce progress, I braced myself. I thought she'd ask for a few signatures or clarify something about property division. Instead, her voice came through calm, clipped and careful, the way lawyers talk when they're about to drop something big. "Hey, Lena," she said. "Quick thing. Your grandfather's estate finally cleared probate. That trust he left you? It's officially yours now. Just under $380,000, all tied up clean." "But—" She hesitated. "But what?" I asked. Well, Idris added a note in the financial disclosure requesting marital consideration of the inheritance. "It's not valid, don't worry. Inheritances aren't marital assets unless commingled. I can push back." For a moment, the room spun. Because Idris didn't even know about that money. At least, he wasn't supposed to. I hadn't told him. Not when Granddad died. Not when the will was read. I hadn't touched that trust or spoken a word about it. And yet, he'd written it into the divorce paperwork. That's when the timeline rearranged itself in my mind like puzzle pieces snapping together. The sudden breakfast. The flowers. The fresh start. The talk about therapy. It hadn't been love. It had been calculation. And for the first time in 13 years, I saw my husband not as a man who fell out of love, but as a man who'd been waiting for the right moment to cash in. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. His sudden sweetness, the carefully timed compliments, the way his eyes lingered on me like he was memorizing something. I used to crave that look. Now it made my skin crawl. I stared at the ceiling and thought of my grandfather. He used to say, When someone's pattern changes overnight, don't ask why they changed. Ask what they found. And Idris had found something. He'd found my inheritance. The next morning, I put on my calmest face. He handed me a cup of coffee like nothing was wrong. "Morning, love," he said. All smiles and syrup. I sipped, nodded. "Morning." Inside, my stomach twisted. Over the next few days, I watched him with the kind of focus I hadn't had in years. I noticed how he'd glance at my phone when I texted. How he'd ask, "So what's your lawyer saying?" like it was casual conversation. How he'd slide his arm around me and whisper, "We can still fix this, you know," right after I got off a call. Every move felt rehearsed. So I stopped reacting. I let him think it was working. When he came home with flowers, peonies, my favorite, I smiled, said thank you, and placed them in a vase. When he suggested a couple's massage, I agreed. When he started leaving little love notes by the coffee pot, I laughed softly and tucked them in a drawer. But that night, after he went to bed, I opened his laptop. It wasn't something I planned. I just couldn't help it. A hunch guided my hand. His password was the same as always, our wedding date. And there it was, an email thread with his friend Nahil. Subject line, "Can you still get alimony if you get back together first?" My pulse quickened. I clicked. Idris had written, "She doesn't know the trust kicked in yet. I think if I stretch this out another few weeks, she'll drop the lawyer and we can renegotiate. I've been laying it on thick, LOL." Nahil replied, "Damn. Just don't knock her up again. That'll turn real fast." I froze. My chest felt tight. We'd lost 2 pregnancies. Both times, I thought it nearly broke him. He'd cried, "Help me," whispered that we keep trying. Now I realized those tears might have been more about control than grief. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. It was one thing to stop loving someone, it's another to scheme against them. The next morning, he came downstairs humming, phone in hand, pretending nothing was wrong. "You okay, babe?" I smiled. Never better. I decided not to confront him. Not yet. Instead, I called Nisha. "Fast track everything," I told her. "No delays, no negotiations. Just finalize it." She didn't ask why. Lawyers know that tone. "Got it," she said. "I'll file the motion today." That evening, Idris suggested a healing weekend. Somewhere quiet, just the 2 of us. He'd found a cabin, he said. Wine tastings, long walks, cozy fires. He looked at me with those same practiced eyes, the ones that used to melt me. I pretended to hesitate. "Maybe. Let me see how I feel." He kissed my forehead, said, "You'll see. We just need time." But when the day came, I faked a stomach flu. Claimed I couldn't travel. He tried to hide his irritation, but I caught it, the flicker of frustration before he masked it with concern. "It's fine," he said. "We'll plan another weekend." I nodded. "Sure." 2 days later, while he was out, I packed up every one of his things. Folded his clothes neatly, placed them in boxes, taped them shut. The way you close a chapter, with precision. When he came home, I was waiting by the door. He frowned, confused. "What's going on?" "The judge finalized the date," I said, handing him the envelope. "You can take these to wherever you'll be staying." He blinked, glancing from the boxes to me. "Lena, what are you doing?" I met his eyes, steady. "You played the wrong game." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I shut the door. He called 3 times that night. I didn't answer. The voicemail came after midnight. His voice was shaky, almost desperate. "Lena, please. You're overreacting. We can fix this. Don't throw it all away." I deleted it. By morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness. The kind that comes from knowing you finally stopped letting someone take from you. Nisha emailed later that day. "Court accepted your motion. He won't get a cent of the inheritance. Everything's in your name." I stared at that message for a long time. My grandfather's money wasn't just a number, it was freedom. The life I'd built, reclaimed from the ashes of manipulation. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need closure from Idris. I didn't need an apology. 2 months after the divorce papers were signed, my life was quiet again. No forced smiles, no fake breakfasts, no watching a man I once loved play pretend in my own home. The silence that used to feel heavy now felt peaceful. I'd moved Idris's boxes out, changed the locks, and even painted the living room a soft sage green, something new, something that didn't carry echoes of him. People talk about heartbreak like it's an explosion, but mine was more like erosion. It wore me down slowly, quietly, until one day, I realized there was nothing left to break. Then one morning, I got an email from a name I hadn't seen in years, Arvind Sethi. He ran the nonprofit my grandfather used to donate to. His message was simple. I heard about your grandfather's passing. We're setting up a small memorial project in his honor. Would you like to be involved? I stared at the screen for a while before typing back. I'd love to. That weekend, I met Arvind at the community garden where my grandfather used to volunteer. The air smelled like mint and damp soil. Arvind was kneeling by a raised bed, wearing jeans smudged with dirt and a faded t-shirt that said, "Grow what you can." When he looked up, he smiled. Not the polished, rehearsed kind Idris used to wear, but a small, real one that reached his eyes. "Lena," he said, standing and brushing off his hands. "Your grandfather was one of the good ones. Used to bring donuts for the volunteers. Always took the worst tools, so others could have the good ones." That hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yeah," I said softly. "That sounds like him." We spent 3 hours talking about my grandfather, the scholarship idea, about grief, and how it sneaks up on you in the middle of good days. Arvind didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it. He just listened. That was new. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the project. We started a small memorial fund for underprivileged kids, a gardening scholarship in my grandfather's name. I used part of the inheritance for it. For once, the money wasn't just sitting in an account tied to pain. It was doing something. Arvind and I became friends. The kind you text at midnight when you can't sleep. The kind who remembers your coffee order without asking. He was calm where Idris had been dramatic, grounded where Idris had been performative, and slowly warmth returned. Not fireworks, not movie scene romance, just something gentle, steady. One afternoon, while we were planting seedlings, Arvind glanced at me and said, "You seem lighter." I smiled. "Maybe I am." He nodded. Sometimes we lose what was never meant to stay. It hurts, but it clears space for what's real. I didn't reply, but I felt that sentence settle deep inside me. Life moved on quietly, the way it always does after storms. Until one day, I got an email from Idris. Subject line, "Catching up." My stomach knotted even before I opened it. He wrote, "Hey Lena, I've been thinking about you. I know I messed up. A lot. But I've been working on myself. Maybe we could talk." No apology for what he did. Just a soft attempt to reopen a door he'd slammed years ago. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Nisha, my lawyer, with a single line. "Looks like I dodged a bullet." She wrote back 5 minutes later, "Girl, you matrix dodged that one." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. 2 weeks later, karma did what karma does best. I got a call from a mutual acquaintance. Apparently Idris had a new girlfriend, a well-off business consultant named Kara. Sweet, trusting, and kind. The kind of woman Idris always targeted. Only this time, she wasn't as naive. Turns out, Idris had borrowed $40,000 from her for a startup, one that didn't exist. She found out, collected proof, and filed charges. Fraud. False representation. The story spread fast. He'd lost his job, his car was repossessed, and the startup lie. It cost him everything, including the woman he thought he could fool next. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even feel glowful. I just felt done, like a book finally closed itself. One evening, while locking up the garden shed, Arvind asked, "You ever think about what you'd say to him if you saw him again?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. Nothing. Some people don't deserve your voice after what they did to your peace. He smiled faintly. "That's strength." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it's just peace." We walked back to the parking lot, quiet except for the sound of crickets. He held the gate open for me, and for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was free, not just from a marriage, but from the idea that I had to earn love by shrinking myself. Now, when I wake up, I brew my own coffee, play my grandfather's old jazz records, and look out at the garden Arvind and I built. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine again. If Idris hadn't done what he did, maybe I'd still be stuck in that loop of almost love and quiet loneliness. But sometimes betrayal is the universe saying, you deserve better. Because when you lose someone who is pretending to love you, what you really lose is the weight that was keeping you from blooming. And that's the best kind of freedom.